Mincome was an experimental Canadian basic income project that was held in Dauphin, Manitoba during the 1970s. The project, funded jointly by the Manitoba provincial government and the Canadian federal government, began with a news release on February 22, 1974, and was closed down in 1979. The purpose of this experiment was to determine whether a guaranteed, unconditional annual income caused disincentive to work for the recipients, and how great such a disincentive would be. It allowed every family unit to receive a minimum cash benefit. The results showed a modest impact on labor markets, with working hours dropping 1% for men, 3% for married women, and 5% for unmarried women. However, some have argued these drops may be artificially low because participants knew the guaranteed income was temporary. These decreases in hours worked may be seen as offset by the opportunity cost of more time for family and education. Mothers spent more time rearing newborns, and the educational impacts are regarded as a success. Students in these families show higher test scores and lower dropout rates. There was also an increase in adults continuing education. A final report was never issued, but Dr. Evelyn Forget conducted an analysis of the program in 2009 which was published in 2011. She found that only new mothers and teenagers worked substantially less. Mothers with newborns stopped working because they wanted to stay at home longer with their babies, and teenagers worked less because they weren't under as much pressure to support their families, which resulted in more teenagers graduating. In addition, those who continued to work were given more opportunities to choose what type of work they did. Forget found that in the period that Mincome was administered, hospital visits dropped 8.5%, with fewer incidents of work-related injuries, and fewer emergency room visits from car accidents and domestic abuse. Additionally, the periods saw a reduction in rates of psychiatric hospitalization, and in the number of mental illness-related consultations with health professionals. See also, basic income, guaranteed annual income, social credit, social determinants of health, social liberalism, wage slavery. References. External links: The Town with No Poverty, A History of the North American Guaranteed Annual Income Social Experiments, Mary Agnes Welch, An End to the Perpetual Welfare Trap. Guaranteed Incomes Debated, podcast on CBC discussing the Canadian project in relation to current events in Switzerland. Switzerland considers a mandatory basic minimum income for everyone. December 2, 2013 at http://www.cbc.callison/ A November 12, 2013 New York Times Magazine article, Switzerland's proposal to pay people for being alive mentions this study.